Hey guys, I wanted to go through your last types of compounds you have to worry about, and that would be non-metal compounds. So we just finished up metal, non-metal compounds, metal polyatomic ion compounds. So now we have non-metal compounds. Okay, so the first type is we'll go through naming them. So if you have something like this, CO2, well, you probably know how to name this, or hopefully you do. That's carbon dioxide. So notice some things you're doing. You're naming the first element. You're not changing any of that, just like metal, non-metal compounds. You just name the first element. Don't change anything. Your second element, oxygen, well, you're changing oxygen to oxide. All right, so it's very similar to metal, non-metal compounds where you change the second element to IDE. Notice that we're also adding a prefix. You're adding the di prefix because there are two oxygens, so carbon dioxide. The reason why that's important is you can't just call this compound carbon oxide because, think about it, are there any other types of carbon-oxygen compounds? Well, yeah, there's CO. That would be carbon monoxide. Okay, so you have carbon dioxide, you have carbon monoxide. So you have to use prefixes because you're not just going to get one combination for, if you have two elements, you're not just going to get one formula potentially. You could have multiple formulas occurring with the same two elements because you have covalent bonds taking place. So you're not worrying about charges here. Okay, so because, yeah, and I just said that. So we have to use a slightly different naming procedure when you're going through it, and again, that's just because electrons are being shared. Alright, so you are responsible for knowing the various prefixes, so you have to know numbers 1 through 10. So some of these you might know, some of them you might not. Some are commonly confused, and I'll mention which ones those are. Okay, so for example, 1, mono, probably figured that out from monoxide. 2 would be di. 3 would be tri. Now 4 is commonly confused, so if you want to put a little star by this one, that's not a bad idea. 4 would be, you would think quad, but it's actually, think of video games. If you're into video games, think of video games that involve 4, and that'll help you. So 4 is tetra. So that sounds a lot like Tetris. Well, if you think about Tetris, all right, all those different pieces, how many blocks make up all of those pieces? 4. How about that? All right, so I'll draw some of the Tetris pieces here. So there's 4, and you have the one that screws you up all the time. All right, so I'm just going to draw a few of them. Okay, so tetra, each piece has 4 parts to it. Tetra, 4 of whatever element you're dealing with. 5, penta. 6, hexa. 7 is also commonly confused. Sometimes students will put an S on this, but 7 is actually hepta, not septa. So hepta for 7. And then 8, 9, and 10, octa, nona, deca. Okay, so make sure you put those to memory. You just kind of need to know them. Some of them you probably know already. Some you might need to pay a little bit more attention to. So, whatever you got to do there. Okay, so those are the potential prefixes you would have to worry about. All right, so what you want to do is whenever you're naming this, you always just name the element. So you would call this, to name the compound normally, you would call this, let's see, do it up here, nitrogen. And then oxygen coming next, so nitrogen oxide. Okay, now you need to add prefixes. Well, there's 1 nitrogen, so it looks like you would call it mononitrogen. And then 3 oxygens would be trioxide. Now the only thing is, notice if you think about CO2, we don't call it monocarbon dioxide or monocarbon monoxide if it's CO. So the exception to the rule is if your first element only has one atom to it, you don't include the mono prefix. Okay, so you would just call this nitrogen trioxide. Okay, pretty straightforward, hopefully. All right, so what I want you to do is go ahead, take a few minutes here. So go ahead, pause the video, because I'm not going to let the video just sit here for 5 minutes. But pause the video. Once you have named all 4 of these, hit play and check your answers to see if you got the right answer here. Okay, so hopefully you got your answers figured out. Hopefully they match what I'm about to put here. So Cl2O5 would be dichlorine, right? Don't change the ending because it's the first element. So chlorine, dichlorine. 5 oxygens, that would be, technically it's pentaoxide. However, what we do is rather than calling it pentaoxide, if you have oxygen and you have a prefix that ends with A or O, like penta, hexa, hepta, you don't write pentaoxide, you write pentoxide, just to make the drop a syllable, make the word flow a little better. If you write pentaoxide on a test or quiz, I'm fine with it, that's no problem. Next, phosphorus. 3 bromines, that would be tribromide. Next, SO3, so that's sulfur, trioxide. And then finally, CCl4, carbon for C. 4 chlorines, so that's tetrachloride. Okay, so hopefully your answers match mine. Not too many issues there, hopefully. Okay, now that's going with the formula and you writing the name, so make sure you can do the opposite where I give you the name and you write the formula. So go ahead, take a few minutes, see if you can write the formulas for these. So pause the video and then hit play once you have your answers written. Okay, so hopefully you have your answers written. Nitrogen dioxide. So you don't need to worry about charges. You just look at the formula that's written and based on the prefixes, write the correct formula based on the name. So nitrogen, no prefix, that would just be N. Dioxide would be O2, so NO2. Trisulfur would be 3 sulfurs. Pentoxide would be 5 oxygens. Arsenic tribromide, so arsenic would be AS, bromine Br, and there's 3 of them. And then the last one, tetrachlorine, so that would be 4 chlorines. Decoxides, that would be O10, so Cl4O10. Alright, so that's really about it. So just to give you a little additional practice here, there's your homework. So should be able to crank this out in no time. And once you're done with that, just find something productive to do the rest of the period there. Okay, so I will be back on Tuesday. We'll check over your homework here first, and then work on a little lab activity. Those of you that are here the day before Thanksgiving. So, okay, so I hope everyone has a nice weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday.